I'm my own worst enemy. Nobody is harder on me than I am on myself, and I have impossibly high standards. Now, how many times have you said something like that about yourself? And we say it like we're being honest with ourselves, like we're taking ownership or something, but listen to what we're actually doing. We're explaining why we can't move forward, why we can't start, why what we did isn't good enough, why we have to do it again, somehow different or better or more perfect. It's like we treat being a perfectionist like it's some kind of personality trait we're stuck with instead of another pattern we keep choosing. And every time we say, I'm just hard on myself, we're choosing to do it again. And that right there, that's self sabotage. And it's quietly keeping you from being as great as you actually could be. And I don't think you're self sabotaging because you're broken or you have some fear of success or it's because of some deep childhood wound. Now, those things might be true to some extent, but truthfully, you're doing it because it's working. It's protecting you from something. And until you see what that something is, you're going to keep choosing to do it. So let's talk about what self-sabotage is actually protecting you from and what it's costing you instead. First, let's start with what self-sabotage can actually look like because it's not always obvious. And while sometimes it might be some grand gesture of you burning your entire life down, it's often much more subtle than that. Let's say you're working on a project for work at your job, and every time you make a little bit of progress, you end up trashing the entire thing and starting over because it just wasn't good enough. Or let's say you ended a relationship out of nowhere just as you were starting to feel something real. Or what about that job that you talked yourself out of applying for, that creative project you almost launched but decided you couldn't do it until you had your logo and your color schemes and the perfect backdrop and a camera and a mic and the dozens of other things that you've convinced yourself that you need before you actually start. Hmm. And every single time you have a reason, a good one. I understand. It sounds responsible or self aware or like you're just trying to do it the right way. But if you're being honest with yourself, there's a pattern here. And the pattern isn't that there's nothing ever good enough. The pattern is that you find a way to end it before you have to find out what would have actually happened if you had it. So, why do you still do this? Well, the easy answer is you're protecting yourself from something. But what? To answer that question specifically for you, you'll need to work with a therapist or a counselor, but I can give you a running head start by telling you what I have learned about self sabotage and the reasons why I would do it and still kind of do. Self sabotage was protecting me from the outcomes that I couldn't control. It was a subconscious way for me to grab hold of life when the outcome of that decision or moment was uncertain for me. If I blew it all up, at least I could blame myself for what happened. And I'm my own worst critic, after all. Because when you're the one who gets to decide that it's not good enough, you never have to wonder if other people would have thought the same thing. When you're the one who ends it, nobody else gets to do that. And that matters because the thing that you're really afraid of isn't failure on its own. It's uncontrolled failure. It's putting something out there and having it not land the way that you see it in your head. It's trying your hardest only to find out that it wasn't good enough. It's being vulnerable when everything inside you is scared to death of what might actually happen. So instead, you choose the path of least resistance, the one where you get to stay in control, where you get to decide that it wasn't right, where the story you get to tell yourself is that I could have done it if I really wanted to, instead of I tried and I failed. And best believe that there's safety in that. It's so much safer because as long as you're the one holding back, you never have to face the gap between what you hoped for and what actually happened. You get to stay in the almost. And almost just doesn't hurt all that much. Now, I hate to be the one to tell you this, but there's a cost to staying in the almost because every time you choose to run and hide in the safety of almost, you're also choosing to stay exactly where you are. You're choosing the version of yourself who could have over the version of yourself who actually did. You're choosing the safety of never knowing the truth over the possibility that the truth might hurt you. And maybe sometimes that's the right call. Maybe there are moments where protecting yourself matters more than taking the risk. Of course, this isn't a black and white issue. There's nuance to understand. But if this is the pattern, if you keep destroying what you're creating, if you keep finding the reasons that things aren't quite ready, if you keep wondering why nothing ever seems to work out, then you're not protecting yourself from failure. It's deeper than that. What I think you're doing is protecting yourself from success. from finishing things, from being the person that doesn't quit before the finish line, protecting yourself from the life you'd actually have. You stopped getting in your own way. See, every time you sabotage yourself, you're reinforcing the story that says, see, I'm just not ready, or it wasn't the right time, or I'm just too hard on myself to ever really do this. And that story becomes the reason the pattern continues. Because if being your own worst enemy is just, if it's just who you are, then you don't have to change it. You just have to keep living with it. And you've become a pro at doing that by now. But I hear you. You want to change. You want to get out of this vicious cycle and learn to be the best you possible. So how do you actually stop? Well, first, you stop by recognizing what the pattern actually is. And if you're not quite sure what it is, then well, no pun intended, it's going to take a little bit of soul searching to figure out. But once you do, you'll notice this little voice in your head that pops up when you're at a mental crossroads. And it'll say things like, this isn't quite right, or maybe I should start over, or I'm just being realistic, or I'm just not good enough. And don't get mad at it. The fact that you're consciously aware of that voice is a good thing. Remember, it's simply trying to protect you. But in that moment, you have a choice. You can choose the ending that you can control, the one where you get to tear it all down before anyone else gets to see it. That's the one where you stay safe and stuck in the almost. Or you can choose the outcome you don't control, where you finish whatever it is, even though it's not perfect. The one where you get to find out what actually happens instead of deciding ahead of time that it's not going to work out. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. The outcome that you don't control might not be the one that you wanted. You might get rejected or denied or told that it wasn't good enough. But here's what I know for sure. If you keep choosing the ending you do control, you already know how that goes. You've lived it 100 times. And it ends with you stuck in the same place, convincing yourself it's because you care too much, or you're too hard on yourself, or you're just not ready yet. The same bullshit over and over again. That's the outcome you'll get every time if you keep choosing it. So you don't have to ask, why do I keep doing this to myself anymore? You already know why. You do it because it feels safer. The real question is, what are you willing to risk to find out what happens when you don't? And you don't have to be perfect at this. You don't have to catch yourself every single time. I definitely don't. And you damn sure don't have to suddenly become the person who never self sabotages again. That's unrealistic. You just have to catch yourself once, one time, where you get to notice the voice, where you get to recognize your own pattern and choose differently. Just one project or risk or moment where you let something exist in the world instead of tearing it down before it's done. Because that one time, that's all you need. It's how you prove to yourself that the ending you can't control isn't the end of the world. And the more you do it, the easier it gets to recognize when you're standing in your own way. So, the next time that voice shows up, and it will, trust me, ask yourself, am I protecting myself from failure, or am I protecting myself from finding out what really happens if I actually try? And then I want you to choose the outcome you can't control just once and see what happens. This is Soul Searching. My name is Landon. See you next time.